Forgiveness is a concept that's widely talked about in different spiritual circles, and it's certainly a very important thing that we have to keep in mind if we feel ourselves holding on to resentment. I think that sometimes there's a flip side to forgiveness, that the ego uses the concept to allow people in our lives that are not helping us grow. And if that's the case, it's best to still forgive and then, let go. Don't be afraid to end relationships if there's a cyclical negative component to them that stunts your growth or holds you back in some way. That's particularly hard if it's a family member or an old friend or that kind of thing, somebody that's been in your life a long time. There's a little formula that I wrote about in my book Unification, which is F equals LO plus RC, which stands for forgiveness equals lack of obligation plus recognition of co-creation. I did the formula as a little mnemonic to remember it. Lack of obligation and recognition of co-creation are the two components of forgiveness that I wrote about. And what that means is that if you do forgive somebody, then recognition of co-creation is necessary in understanding that on some level, whatever you are forgiving was an experience that came into your life for a lesson, that it was co-created in the sense that all experiences that we have with other people take an overlap. It requires an overlap in the two individuals' worlds and experiences to come together. And even if we didn't directly contribute to a situation that occurred to us by another person, on a karmic level, we did, because that's part of how I believe karma plays itself out, is that if we have a lesson to learn, even if it is from another life, then we're going to experience something. And when we recognize that this was for our growth and part of our, evolutionary process, then we can recognize it wasn't just about the other person doing something wrong, but something that we, on some level, energetically needed to experience to learn from. The L sub O part of, or LO part of the equation, lack of obligation, that means that when you forgive somebody, don't confuse that with feeling obligated to them in some way. You're not obliged to increase your contact with somebody when you forgive them. You're not obliged to, reconnect on a strong level that you once were at, perhaps before some form of betrayal or whatever. There's no obligation that goes along with forgiveness. And I think that sometimes we can get the message from our ego or elsewhere that there is. And that can hold people back from forgiving, from the process of understanding that this was not about evil and righteousness so much as just the ongoing dance of ego being played out in this world. So forgive in the sense of seeing how it's co-created, but don't feel obliged to another person, and don't rush your process of forgiveness. There's a grief process that involves denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and allow yourself to go through your grief before telling yourself that you've forgiven when you really haven't, because when we jump ahead because forgiveness is an ideal, then there could be some suppressed feelings, anger and sadness and so forth, that don't get expressed, and they linger on, and they're just going to come up again unless they're fully experienced. So allow yourself to go through the entire spectrum of emotions that you need to feel before you get to an authentic place of forgiveness, because only when it's authentic does it matter. Before that, it's if it's a forgiveness that's being portrayed in some way, it's just phony and it doesn't have any real solidity to it. And you know, whatever's behind it, the unfinished business is going to come up again.